Hello, I'm Pauline Davies, and with me today in Paraty, Brazil, at the Quantum Biology School of Pioneer Science, are two distinguished researchers. First, Pedro Pascutti. Pedro, you're a professor at the Carlos Chagas Filho Institute of Biophysics at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, where you investigate quantum processes in biological macromolecules, using both computational and theoretical approaches. And with us is Marcelo Terra Cunha. Marcelo, welcome. You're a professor of mathematical physics at the University of Campinas in Sao Paulo, and your research focuses on the foundations of quantum mechanics. So I want to know, first off, Marcelo, hasn't it all been worked out by now?
Okay, that's a good question. I would say that one of my major concerns nowadays, this is the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, so one of my major concerns is to bring quantum to whoever. It's really to announce the words of quantum for the society. But research-wise, my focus is on foundations, really. We would really like to have a good answer for the strange question, where quantum theory comes from. Because we know very well what quantum theory is and how to use it, but we don't have really good explanations, and this impacts a lot in educating people and etc. of what is it really about.
Because it is incredibly weird, isn't it?
Not sure. I think we are more weird than quantum theory. That simply as we are the ones that classify things, we say it's their fault and not ours. But probably it's just a question that for many, many, many generations, humans were used to think in classical terms.
Yeah.
Then when we are faced with quantum theory, this seems different, and usually human beings react in a strange way for different things. But it's not awareness of quantum theory itself. It's that 100 years is not enough for us to really get acquainted to how should we think about quantum theory, how we should act towards quantum theory, and then it brings this kind of that weird thing.
Yes, because it's so far outside our typical experience, isn't it? Okay, well, we'll talk about that later. And Pedro, what exactly are you working on now with your biological macromolecules?
Good evening. I have worked on interactions and recognizing between molecules, biological molecules also. We started working in experimental area in biophysics at USP. Yeah. And after I went to Rio de Janeiro to work at Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in introducing the molecular modeling area in that university. In that department, maybe. And then nowadays I am working on quantum mechanics, the effect of intermolecular orbitals. How one atom from one molecule interacts to another atom to the other molecules. There is intensity of these orbitals because biological molecules they have thousands of orbitals crossing from one molecule to the others, and this effect is not practically recognized yet. And then there is recognizing between molecules and the signalizing and the energy of interactions. This task we think is defined by intermolecular orbitals. How molecules recognize to one another, how cellular signalizing starting molecular signalizing until the electron signalizing.
So really, it's very fundamental type of research, applying quantum mechanics to biological systems. In this case, macromolecules.
Yes, yes, but there is also small molecules, hormones, and pharmaceuticals that is recognized in the same way by intermolecular orbitals.
So do you think that by more understanding we could create better pharmaceuticals?
Yes, yes, because whole natural ligands are recognized by molecules. You can do the same, but with pharmaceuticals. Because if you know the intermolecular orbitals, we can reproduce this with pharmaceutical molecules. And the interaction and the energy is practically the same that the natural ligands.
So are chemistry companies, pharmaceutical companies, getting interested in this?
Yes, yes. We have working on developing of methods for pharmaceutical industry also. But today we are working at the research level at the university also. But and the final products can be pharmaceutical products.
Really very exciting and a nice practical outcome at the end. And Marcelo, why do you think quantum biology has become so important right now?
Okay, a good question. I'm not sure if it's already that important, but it's promising. And it's always important for basic research to go to promising questions, promising fields. So
Promising fields.
promising fields, exactly, for sure. So let us focus on this specific example of drug development. So nowadays we use some strategy in the industry where small variations of some compounds are prepared and all of them are tested until deciding which one will be the best choice. And with what we call quantum simulators, it's very natural to consider the possibility of taking one quantum computer that works as a simulator. So it's not a general quantum computer that's much harder to do, but it's a quantum computer with few parameters that you can adjust. And adjusting those few parameters, you can mimic the behavior of different compounds. And then those changes can be made in the quantum computer, in the quantum simulator, before deciding which ones will be the interesting ones for going to clinical thing. Other point is that we know that life is chemistry. So since quantum theory is the foundation, it's the physical foundation of chemistry, it's very natural that quantum theory has implications immediately to chemistry, from chemistry to biology. So it's an important question to make where classical explanations fail and where they should be changed to quantum ones. So it's an interesting point.
So the technology has advanced enough to make use of it now, to use quantum processes in biology. And what you just said, you explained how, of course, atoms and quantum mechanics is very important in the binding of atoms. Does it play any role in other life processes apart from in those really fundamental forces? And I can ask both of you. Did you understand that question, Pedro? Did quantum processes, are they prevalent? Are they found in other biological processes apart from the binding of atoms and in the very fundamental structure?
The biological process starts at the electronic level.
Yeah.
And then a level, a scale, maybe. But I think everything, life, matter, and non-life, all the matter, materials, material science, and biological structure, science, structural biology. deals with electronic. There is a few differences, but one difference in biological system is the communication, because the materials there is, for example, semiconductors, and in living being, the proteins and DNA works on like semiconductors also. Because the electron can move for large distance in, for example, in DNA, and also in the interface of DNA with proteins. And then there is so much we have to understand with biological system to apply in technology also. And then between large molecules like protein-protein interactions, protein and cellular membranes. There is a large field to study about the electronic structure in these interfaces to understand a lot of things.
And you, Marcelo, do you have an opinion? Yeah.
Exactly. Directly to your question, we are in the moment, to my knowledge, in the situation that we have two good examples, and everyone loves to go back to those two examples. That is one about photosynthesis, and of course, photosynthesis is something very important for life. We would not have this world in the way we have without photosynthesis. And for explaining the transport of energy in a chain inside the organelles in the plants, they discovered that classical explanations do not work.
Right.
And a quantum model where, so to some sense, nature is aware of quantum theory for much, much more time than us. So in some cases, apparently photosynthesis, a very important one, is one where nature really took advantage of quantum process to be more efficient. And the other famous case is orientation of some specific birds that apparently they have a quantum compass in their eyes.
The avian compass.
Exactly, and this is really beautiful. And in some sense, we are close to something that the quantum algorithms community passed some decade, I would say. I was a student at that time, and it was quite strange that every second year we would go to the same courses and people would say, and there are quantum algorithms like Shor, Grover, and I forgot the other one. And all the time we were giving the three same examples.
Right.
And this was quite strange that all the time you come back to the same. But in the end, nowadays we have a complete zoo of quantum algorithms. So I do have the feeling that we are waiting for the next discoveries, and that when they appear, it's quite reasonable that they will bunch together, that there will be many other cases that we can cite more than just the same two examples of where apparently quantum bio is already manifesting itself.
Do you agree with that, Pedro? So do you think that quantum effects are really prevalent much more widely, but we just haven't seen them yet?
Yes. How the way every way we interact with the environment is using quantum mechanics. For example, the vision. The vision is a classic quantum process, not classical mechanics, but classically understood. But the smell, the tact, stimulus with small molecules interact specifically with receptors using quantum mechanics.
So really, you're also implying that quantum effects were there fundamentally right from the start of life, not just when life became complex, because we recognize the quantum effects in photosynthesis and bird navigation and even I suppose you say in cells. So it's there. Is it there right from the start, do you think?
I think the evolution established the way to use quantum mechanics. And then if we think when life started and the evolution and the adaptation to the environment and the competition for the surviving, all the process that was in the evolution is an optimization of the use of the circumstance of the tools at disposition. And then the electronic structure at the molecules, the small molecules from the beginning, was used also. Then when the more complex organism started to exist, they used in the competition and optimized these tools of quantum mechanics. And they did this since the small molecules interactions in the past. The use of quantum mechanics was a way to compete with simple organism. And then I think it's a part of the evolution, the use of quantum mechanics.
That's a very important point, because again, chemistry is a consequence of quantum mechanics.
Of course, yes.
So life is inherently related to quantum by beginning.
Yeah.
But of course, we are in the same pattern as quantum technologies. We nowadays talk about the second quantum revolution. We are really focused on finding examples where the more special conditions of quantum theory really manifest itself in biological systems. But no doubt that quantum is in the origin of matter. In our way of understanding stability of matter, we could only achieve this by quantum mechanics.
Yes, I was just thinking about the effects. There's something different apart from those fundamental forces that held the atoms together. But anyhow, when Pedro was talking really about, I think, cell communication and sensing, it made me think of smell. Are quantum effects important in smell, do you think? Pedro?
Yes. There is a receptor, a specific receptor for every small molecule that signalizes the smell. And then the interaction of a small molecule with its specific receptor involves intermolecular orbitals also. Several atoms from the receptor and from the small molecules interact profoundly with the beyond the surface of the receptor. And then the recognizing of this small molecule use several atoms inside the receptor because of the large distance the intermolecular orbitals can spread.
But again, one question that we were discussing during dinner yesterday, curiously, myself with Jacques Pienard, another guy that is here, is that we possibly don't have a perfect model for understanding smelling that goes beyond this idea of each different smell will have a receptor. Because, of course, the list of smells is infinite. So it's really something that with some receptors, we make some patterns. And that's a reasonable question. If we open two different sources of smell, or of tastes, how they contribute or how they interact among themselves. And in case we could see interference, that is one of the beautiful quantum traits, then it would really be a kind of special quantum effect in smelling or in tasting. But all of this is to the moment, very speculative. His answer is perfect in the sense that all the receptors are quantum receptors to some sense, but the other stage is, can we see special quantum behavior on them? This is open to discussions that possibly in the future we'll see.
Well, I'm sure the perfume manufacturers would love to know the answer to that.
There is, excuse me, there is another process that is the memory. When we live for years, we recognizing is a process of memory accumulation. Then, when we receive a new stimulus, we compare with the memory bank we have in brain.
Yes. Again, I'm not terribly good at that, but would love to be. But I need to move on to another question. Entanglement. I mean, that's super important in quantum computation. Do you think it plays any role in living processes? Marcelo?
That's a difficult question in the sense that almost sure two distant molecules and etc. in a biological mean will not be entangled. They will be in a state that can be described classically, and this is the opposite of entanglement in this sense. On the other way around, every atom is already a system that has entanglement in it. And when he said about molecular orbitals and things like this, it's really a way that we describe the structure of matter, not in terms of its original constituents anymore, but of things that are built upon the original constituents. So in the description of the electrons and protons that are there, the state of a molecule, the fundamental state of a molecule, is already some entangled thing. So entanglement is there for sure. The second level of your question is, does it really play a special role for life? This we don't know yet. This would be a fantastic thing to discover.
Well, I suppose what I'm trying to get at is maybe, is there any quantum computation happening in our cells, in our bodies? Could there be?
Again, in the sense that, is there any quantum processing and any processing that cannot be described classically, but can only be described in a quantum way and useful? So we are not able to do photosynthesis, so I don't have the answer yet. But since we have our energy from them, in some sense, it's already there in the chain, in the supply chain, in the food chain for us. But it's much probable that is something that we were not able to find yet, then that it's impossible. So, but of course, very difficult. It's not a simple thing in the sense that to quantum mechanics, 37 Celsius is a very high temperature, and entanglement is not a good friend of high temperature.
No.
So
Heat
heat is a dangerous thing for quantum matter and for quantum subtleties. But even the central answer is, in general, not, and that's why it's difficult for us to conceive it. If it were in general, yes, we would so use it to it that we would not search for it. But again, a colleague sometimes said, everyone who bet against human ingenuity failed. So it's something that it's quite reasonable to imagine that it will be eventually appear.
It seems to me from everything you've been saying that there's a lot of progress being made right now, exciting developments in the world of quantum biology. Would you agree? I mean, would you agree, Pedro?
Yes, I agree. Concerning the brain, the works, how the brain works, I think he work using quantum processing. Yes. because you don't need to have your own, on scale that you use only 1 or 0, because you have a large amount of molecular and atomic orbitals that can be used like 1 and 0, and several numbers between 1 and 0, each a number, one orbital, for example. And then we use the brain, I think, like a quantum processor.
Yes, I would say that, again, there are two levels for the questions. So one in this case is what we could call intrinsic quantum biology. This is really a field that is trying to find the interesting problems. The two first were already found, but we need more of them. But another point that is really developing faster is the use of quantum technologies towards biological inspired problems.
Yes.
This one is really developing very fast. And this is so in some sense, it's just application of quantum development towards other fields. And of course, this is
it's got
important
relevance in medicine, and of course in the fundamental work that I imagine that you're doing as well. Is that correct? You're using the quantum technology. And
yes, in my area, we simulate the movement of atoms and molecules, and we register all the position of the atomic positions in one molecular trajectory. And then we can do that only classically, using only classical mechanics, because the time of simulation to simulate a biological process there is very large. And then using quantum computer, for example, we can do we can accompany our electronic movements, our movements of the electron, all the electrons of a macromolecule or a system of macromolecules. But just today we can accompany only a few nanoseconds, 1 microseconds of the movement of atomic systems in biology, molecular system, macromolecular system with several atoms. Then I can. What you need is softwares that we can do this simulation in a quantum computer. I think today we cannot use without a computational system and software especially developed for this simulation. Some years ago, we simulated the only picoseconds time scale, but today we are in the same scale with electronic structure. Some 10 years ago, we could simulate only atomic structure using classical mechanics. Today, it's possible to simulate a full protein using quantum mechanics, but only for a few picoseconds.
So Pedro has just described some of the triumphs and difficulties in his area. And what do you think, Marcelo? What do you think of the open questions in quantum biology that really need to be tackled?
Okay, that's difficult. But clearly, finding other quantum effects in bio is one of the main targets. To go beyond this list of two, we really need to have at least a handful of examples. And I do believe that when we have a handful, we'll have a shelf of different examples. And this is really the central step for this part of intrinsic quantum bio, to my understanding. But again, the other, probably the best. So if I need to invest in the field, I would say that finding applications of quantum sensors, of quantum computing, and even of quantum communication to systems, to biological systems, can be a very good path for success.
Okay, and finally, in 1944, Edward Schrödinger wrote his famous book, What is Life? And he asked a question. He hinted at what he called a new type of law. I don't think we've discovered a new type of law. Do you? And do you think it's possible? Is it out there somewhere?
It can be the case. Of course, whenever we try to go beyond where we have already reached, one of the possibilities, like it has happened with quantum theories, to discover some new kinds of laws. It's really to say, okay, sorry, what we knew before is not enough, and we need something else to replace it. So to generalize it in some sense, but in some other cases to replace. So it's possible that we go towards this revolutionizing in this hard sense. To the moment we are trying the complementary approach. We are trying to use quantum theory, where Schrödinger at one side was one of the founders. Quantum theory would not happen without his contributions, probably. But at the same time, he somehow regretted it. Before even writing What's Life, he was very concerned with the focus to where quantum theory had been driven. And I tend to say that his regrets were wrong. That he, together with Einstein and other of the founding fathers, were somehow too classical for what quantum theory was proposing, while people like Heisenberg and Bohr were really touching the deepest part of quantum theory. So in some sense, they were towards the new theory more than the other guys that were very used to the previous way of thinking and trying to discover inside quantum theory another level of somehow classical theory. So, but of course, he can be right in this necessity of even another level of novelty, and this other level of novelty can be necessary for understanding life and also for understanding general physics.
And Pedro, have you got an opinion? Was Schrödinger misguided with his
think,
idea of a new kind of law?
I think to understand what life is, first we have to solve a big problem in physics. That is the unification of physics. Unification, for example, the quantum mechanics and gravitation theory. To try to unification, maybe Einstein has done this a few years ago now. But what we need is to understand what happened when we tried to unify this big theory, the theory of everything. There is a proposal that there is several dimensions. That's one we perceive now in life. In our interaction with the environment, and maybe it can explain what is conscientiousness, the dependence of life with conscientiousness is only the humanity or human being use the conscientiousness. What is conscientiousness?
So it's an open question still. So you'll all have to keep working hard on it. But
what is this dimension that the unification theory has appointed? What does this signify for the life and for the conscientiousness? I think we have to unificate the physics before to understand what life is.
So we've got fun days ahead, more work. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.